Hello, everyone. This is
Hello.
Bruce Ward, and this is joined with Tim Holman, and we'll be walking through using Microsoft Teams to increase teamwork with voice and conferencing. We're obviously using the GoToMeeting platform or GoToWebinar platform for a couple of reasons. A, our contract with them continues until September of this year. B, it's actually very helpful to show through this platform the Teams technology, showing teams within teams. You got some clicks that you have to go around, and furthermore, it works very well with our other marketing systems. So with that, a little brief introduction. Tim, why don't you take us away and let's talk about teamwork with voice and conferencing.
Alrighty. So we'll start with the agenda. Got it presented a little differently here today. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the path from Skype to Teams, because Skype is scheduled to be end of life next July. So we've got just a little bit over a year to go with Skype. We'll talk about the calling features of Teams. I'll do a little bit of demoing with that. We'll talk about meetings and some of the options there. Teams Rooms, which is kind of an extension of a meeting into a fixed space. Part of all of this discussion are the devices that you can use with Teams, and then just spend a little bit of time on live events, which is kind of what we're doing here. Would be more of a live event instead of a meeting. So this is the agenda again, broken down. So we'll start with the journey from Skype to Teams. So there's two ways you can really plan this, and they're listed at the bottom. And one is islands mode, and the other is, I guess, a collaborative mode. So we would really recommend the islands mode. It's when you set Teams up standalone. So you can do everything, you have all the functionality of Teams, but it works independent of Skype. It lets you test things out. You don't have to worry about interoperability or information going back and forth between the two. And many of the webinars I've seen when this concept has been presented, it's presented as, right, islands are for vacations. You don't spend a lot of time there. So if you want to, you only have a year. So if you want that migration to go quickly, you set Teams up as an island. You get in it, you play around with it, and when you're comfortable with it, you just cut over. More complex would be that collaborative mode where you have the option to have chat between Teams and Skype. It's more complicated to set up, and it takes a lot longer because people are comfortable with what they're used to. It really doesn't force them to get into the other platform. So those are your two paths. We would definitely recommend islands mode.
You might even break this into sizes. I mean, if you're, a couple thousand seats or higher, you might consider the collaboration just because it's a monumental effort to maybe flip people over, if you will, and islands mode might not work for you. But in most cases, we found that islands mode is best when an organization feels comfortable. They can go from Teams being an island mode to only in Teams, and kind of go through that upgrade process.
So just a few statistics to throw out there. Why Teams and why this type of a meeting? So just some information I grabbed from Microsoft when we were putting this together. And I think, things to call out here, it's that productivity. People aren't prepared. It's getting people on the same page. And I think, there's a lot of reasons like a tool like Teams can help you overcome. So
I've got two great examples, actually, Tim. Remember, and we use these every day when meetings. So let's say that I don't know, people. It's a 10 o'clock meeting. Some people are jumping on at 9:57. I'm not doing anything. If I'm sitting at my PC and I get a little notification in the bottom right that people have joined the meeting, which is built in by default, I may join the meeting at 9:57, and suddenly we see that everyone else is here at 9:57, so we start the meeting then. That's 3 more minutes of productivity, right? Little things like that notification are great. And then another one I noticed the other day, Tim, I don't know if you've seen this, but on the attendee list, we were asking if everyone was here at the meeting. And on the right-hand side, when you look at the attendees, you see all the 8 people that are in the meeting, and then you see attendees who were invited but are not here at the bottom. And it might say, I think in our case, it was Marcia, one of our project managers, was not there, but it also said she's out of office. So we weren't expecting her. So people were asking if it was a quorum, and all we had to click was either one button to see the attendee list, but basically we knew we were a quorum at that time. So little productivity things like that really help the meeting get underway faster, or get underway knowing that you're a quorum. So.
And there's a couple new features that have been released that I will talk about later that help with meetings and all of those pieces being productive.
Good.
So, why Teams Voice? Peters and Associates have been using it pretty much since they came out with it. It's come a long way. So, number one for new voice seats sold. It's been around for 12 years, right? So just some statistics on why. Since we've used Teams as our voice platform, I've used it with this headset and a computer, and call quality has been top notch. I was on a webinar by Microsoft, and they talked about how when they built the platform, they partnered with ISPs so that calls would go directly to a Microsoft location and wouldn't go hopping around the internet. So call quality is, they even ask you at the end of every call to rate your call quality. And, they have a call quality dashboard. So I was trying to simulate a poor call, and I actually stuck my phone in the freezer, and it still was a good call. So I couldn't even get it to, switching between wireless and cellular, and it was seamless. So.
Yeah, this goes back a few years, but there were some ISPs who would actually inject white noise into the Skype calls at the time, which have now become Teams, but they were injecting white noise in there because people were not used to the quietness and the great sound effectively that you were getting on these digital-based calls. They were attuned to some white noise being in the background, so they would inject it in there to make it sound more realistic. So.
All right, so first poll question, does your phone system work remotely? So, when COVID hit, people really found out in a hurry if their phone systems were set up for people to work remotely. For us, there's a client you can install on your cell phone so that your work number will ring your cell phone. I'll demo that later, but it's just great functionality, and it made our transition from office to remote seamless.
And Tim, just to clarify, so people answer correctly, if I have a phone system that can forward to my cell phone, but that's about all of its capabilities, would you say that it can work remotely or no?
I would say no, because you can't initiate a call with your same number.
Right.
So you can receive a call, but you can't make a call.
So one number effectively that works wherever you are.
So 67%, 71. So it looks like most people have that capability.
Yeah, this was one of the things, early on, I would say in the early weeks of COVID, where people were like, I got salespeople that are now at home and they need to take calls. I don't want to give out my mobile phone number. Tim, I think you had a school district, right? That within 2 days, a day or two, you lit up several hundred staff with new phone numbers. And basically they had one phone number that worked. Even if they still leverage their device, they could just load the Teams client on here, and either their PC would ring, their Mac would ring, their phone would ring, but it was one number, inbound and outbound, for them, and that was set up in a very quick fashion. We did that at a number of organizations in the early couple weeks where people did not have phone systems that traveled remotely. So it's quite simple to do.
So we'll get into the meat of the agenda. We'll start with calling. And so what is, right, Teams voice? It's basically you take your PBX and you put it in the cloud. There's a couple different ways to do it. You can use what Microsoft calls a calling plan. You pay Microsoft, they handle your numbers, or you can put an appliance right on premise and have it route the numbers that you have existing into Microsoft's cloud.
And that appliance is called a session border controller. Major providers are Audio Codes, Sonos, and several others. Those appliances, depending on what you're hooking in there, whether it be your PRI, SIP, POTS lines, you may want to have some redundancy there, have multiple appliances, travel out of different facilities, some failover planning, things of configuration, backups, and things of that nature. So there's some things to think about for direct routing, whereas all of that is handled obviously with calling plans.
Yeah, and certainly the easiest way is using the Microsoft calling plan. So I was able to use that in our demo environment and provision new numbers from Microsoft and assign them to users. And the whole process took probably 10 minutes. So why would you want your PBX in the cloud? So here's just some of the advantages, right? It saves time. There's no hardware to support anymore, right? Ooh, went too far. Maintenance is a huge cost when you have equipment in-house. You have to pay annually just to keep it up to date for repairs. You probably have a contract with someone that will come out and service it. It's really hard to get new features on an in-house appliance. New features are added in Microsoft's environment all the time. You can't really scale, right? Hardware on premise, you have to buy additional racks and cards. And over time, that equipment becomes much more difficult to, keep up. Microsoft guarantees uptime, which, depending on what your investment is, it's a difficult thing to do in-house.
I just add two things from a mergers and acquisitions perspective. I know we've had a lot of organizations we work with for M&A activities, and oftentimes, we'll help move the mail system over or files and Active Directory merges, infrastructure, things of that nature. PBXs are challenging, right? Suddenly it's like I bought a 50-person company, they have their own PBX. What are we going to do? 3-digit dialing to them? How does that fold in? And do we move the users over? Oh, they have phones that are incompatible. So it's a pain, right? PBXs are a whole separate ball of wax. And so you kind of paint yourself in a circle by getting it. And then I'd also just make a comment that keep in mind cloud voice, might sound like, oh, that's very futuristic. Microsoft is not the first cloud voice provider. ShoreTels, the Ring Centrals, they've been doing this for a decade, right? And Microsoft has been doing it to some degree for a great period of time too. So they're just, the virtualization of PBXs has been occurring for the last 15 years. The fact that they're cloud managed and hosted is more like a 5 to 10 years. The fact that Microsoft's in the game fully is more like in the 2 to 5 years. So it's just the virtualization and maturation of PBX technologies that have occurred.
So, are you going to be missing anything by putting your PBX on the cloud? And certainly not. Any enterprise feature from a phone system is available, and you have advantages. The ability to tie your calendar in with your phone system. So, your phone won't ring if you're in a meeting because it knows your calendar. You can set up the ability to call a team or call on behalf of. All these things are, you used to have a tech come out and he would sit at the phone and push buttons on it to get it to do some of these advanced features. Now you can do it within the client. So it's super easy and just convenient.
And think about all the cloud providers that are out there right now, the Ring Centrals, ShoreTels, and so forth. They're trying so hard to get their client onto your PC so it can understand calendaring so that it can operate like this. So everybody's fighting for the same thing. Microsoft just happens to have the inside track because they really already have the desktop and so forth. So as long as they do cloud well, or cloud PBX well, they should be a leading provider for that technology, and indeed that's what's happening. They own things from a licensing perspective and a desktop perspective, and if voice works well, which to date for years it has, it's a pretty natural evolution.
And it's affordable. So depending on what you have for your Office licensing, the E1, E3, E5, or Business Premium, it's just an add-on. So for the E1 and E3, it's right $8 for the phone system add-on, and then it's $12 per user per month. You can add the ability to have a number for your meetings, and that's the $4 cost, but not everyone needs that. It's just the person creating the meeting. So
yeah, the
it's a
audio
very
conferencing.
affordable option. Yeah.
Yep.
And then how does that compare? So I went and I found just a comparison. I think it's a Cisco on-premise solution. So you got to buy the hardware, you have to buy the licensing, and then there's those annual costs. And so I think this was a 100-user system, just a quick comparison. So on the Microsoft side, it's just licensing. And on the other side, it's all that hardware and ongoing licensing to support that. So
we had another smaller organization that they were quoting and were about to pull the trigger on they were 20 users, 20, 25 users, and they were going to pull the trigger on a $40,000 phone system. When we did the calculation for them with Teams, which they were impressed with, they determined it was $3,500 a year. So just a 12-year payoff, besides the cost of money and so forth. So that's apples to apples. With phones kind of being separate because they needed to choose phones either way.
Yep. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demo here. So what I have is I'm logged in to our demo tenant with a desktop user, a web user, and then my cell phone. So, right, if I click on the calling app, jumps you right to my speed dials. So I have some users pinned here. I can go into my contacts, history. So the easiest way, anytime you see a card for person, right, you can just go and click on the phone and that will initiate a phone call. I'm gonna make sure I mute my microphone, and then over here you'll see my cell phone is ringing, right? And it's ringing with a business number. Gotta make sure you get that muted, otherwise it gets really confusing. So I initiated a call from my desktop to my cell phone, not calling my cell phone number, but calling the Teams number that was assigned to Lee. So he's the user on that. And just to show you how simple things are, if I wanted to add another person to this, I could click on the participant list and I could just type in a person's name and I could add another person to this call. Let's say I wanted to consult and then transfer. So I can come under my more actions here. I can do consult and transfer. And this will bring up a list of users. So I'm gonna pick Grady because he's the person I have logged in here. So it pulls up a texting dialog box, right? I tested this early so you can see I'm gonna ask the same question. And you take a call. What's neat, what you're also seeing here is a new feature, which is this read receipt. So I can see that he saw this message. So if I send that message, that'll pop up on my web client here from Tim, can you take a call? This is why you don't demo Teams from within Teams, because it gets really confusing. sure. That should pop up here. I heard a ding. And so now then I can transfer. And so now it's going to ring again. Let's say accept. Well, that was it.
I got it.
It gets really confusing when you start adding multiple devices. So, another way to make a call is just come up to the taskbar and just type call, and then who do you want to call, right? And so that easy, I can, right, initiate a phone call. And now this is actually going to ring a web client. I'm not going to answer it because we'll add more confusion here.
So web client, full client, client on a phone, client on room devices, client on a prepackaged phone that you purchase. These clients, if you will, are the secret sauce that are effectively able to do Teams functionality, look and feel as the same between a web client, a real client, phone client, obviously based on screen space and how things adjust according to screen. But Tim, you had a long experience with a phone on your desk, 20 plus years. How's it been without a phone?
I don't miss it at all. The only issue I've had is if I don't have my headset on and I get a call, then I'm in a panic because the quality of your microphone and speaker on a laptop does not compare to the headset. So headset's seamless and it's hands-free, the quality's great. But if someone's calling me, I'm like, oh crap.
Right.
You get out the headset, turn it on real quick, and try to connect before it times out.
Yeah, one of the things that was interesting for our customer, they were in a demo and they put the Teams client on their cell phone, and they were used to cell phone quality, AT&T or T-Mobile or otherwise, and picking up the phone and doing a call. But now this was a client on that, so it's the same device, but they were using the Teams client and placing a call, and effectively it's a digital call, and they're like, this call is totally different. Same device, but now it's totally different because it's a Teams call on here, which is essentially a digital, client and discussion on the back end through the internet, but encrypted and digitized. So in any case, it's just the device sometimes is not meaningful, and in certainly in a lot of instances recently, this phone device is all you really need. When you get back to the office and you want to look at handsets, for some people, do it. But for now, this might be all that a lot of the younger generation might want. I'm not certainly part of the younger generation, but this is basically a great experience with some earpods and so forth.
So we have a plan to get you started. So if you were interested in Teams Voice and $5,000 flat fee, then we can manage that for you at $12 per user per month, where we'll handle, configuration options and troubleshooting. So there's some things that have to be taken into consideration, and that's getting your numbers to Microsoft, and we talked about those earlier. So it's an affordable option. It's pretty straightforward to set up, and we've done it for several customers.
Yep, just decided to make it easy for you to purchase from us if that's a plan you want to go with, and it's for people with 100 users or less. Although there's a number of areas that kind of qualify you for that, but some of the integration piece is not in there. If you're a couple hundred users, it kind of doesn't matter. It'll change the price a little bit, but not dramatically. If you got to integrate with a call center, well then all bets are off, and we gotta go back into looking at what that requires and so forth. But really great technology to take advantage of, and pretty trustworthy. For those that care, and I don't know if Tim, if you have that slide on it, but Gartner, Microsoft is upper right leader in voice unified communications here. So it's a trusted platform by analysts, by certainly by us as an organization, and by some customers that are, kind of as PBXs are reaching their end of life, or they're having to move to a shift to a remote capable phone system. This is becoming a pretty logical choice.
I don't think it's in this deck.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. You got spared a Gartner slide.
So yeah, second poll question. Now we're going to jump into the meetings piece of this. So, right, and I know people have scrambled with this when COVID hit, and do you have a solution to use video to do meetings remotely? Is it something that you trust? Is it secure? Is it reliable? Is it easy to use? Does it integrate with your calendar and other options? So I think those are all advantages of the Teams platform, because it's all integrated in one package, and it's secure and it's great quality.
I have to believe the percentage is going to be high at this point, because
I would hope so.
It's difficult to run a business without something of this nature at this juncture, but it's possible we'll have a few people out there. And then, certainly there's a lot of reading between the lines, right? It might be a dissatisfactory experience. It might be a unique experience, meaning, yeah, 3 people have the ability to conference, but not everybody within our organization. So, or we do it, we don't do it well. So the partially is certainly getting some some hits, and I think that's really, even when Skype for Business was around, right? When you were lighting up Skype for Business and the conferencing, you were allowing anybody to have an internet connected meeting with anyone, and Teams is just an exaggeration, if you will, of that, making the experience even easier from any web browser, from any phone device. You don't need to dial in. You can click the Teams client on here and join and have a digital experience. I can see screen shares on here and watch your PowerPoint from my son's baseball game. I don't have a son who plays baseball, but anyway, just things of that nature. So it's a great experience. I think, Tim, you'll walk through some of those capabilities here.
Absolutely. So jumping into the meetings portion, we kind of just went over this. It's mobile, it's desktop, it's a dedicated room. So it's anytime, anywhere you have that same experience. What's really neat with the mobile piece of it is the ability to be an active participant in that meeting instead of passive. So instead of just listening, you can actually share content from your mobile device right into the meeting. So situations demand you join from where you're at. It may not be ideal, but I think that experience is much better now using this mobile device. Just jumping into some of the other features, I'm sure everyone's seen this video, and this is just to kind of emphasize how Microsoft is continuing to develop the platform. So this is a relatively new feature, the ability to blur the background, and now you can do customized backgrounds. You see the backgrounds that are live behind us because that's not an option in the go-to platform. So we can't customize our background. So I have my fake brick wall and Bruce has his bookshelf.
Yeah, I have the real bookshelf, but all morning I was in Teams meetings and I was in various virtual rooms, but today this is my real room, and I don't have an option. Can you believe it? Go to meeting, no backgrounds on that, and this is a 15-year-old product.
So in addition to hosting that meeting, having the ability to record that meeting, so you see your attendee list. Marcia's not in the office, but it's an important meeting, so she's going to want to watch that later. So click of a button, now you've recorded that meeting, and you can transcribe that meeting. So you can search through the transcription of a meeting that you recorded to skip to a specific portion of that meeting.
Yeah, I mean, other meet with intelligence. I mean, I don't know, Tim, this might be on the new features list in terms of what's coming out. I forget what its state of development is, but other intelligence is Microsoft's putting intelligence into listening at the meeting. And if it hears us all talking and suddenly a dog barks, right, it's actually going to mute the dog bark so that nobody hears it within the call because it's a background noise ultimately, and they're using their intelligence to weed out things that are going to interfere with your experience.
So just some additional functionality that that mobile client has. It will monitor your battery and turn your video off to preserve your call. If your network signal is bad, again, it will turn off your video to preserve your bandwidth. Auto reconnect. So you're traveling and switching between cells and it drops, automatically calls back. If all else fails, you can call in to the meeting via your cell connection instead of using an internet connection. So all these things that just you would never have thought of, and they just make the experience so much better.
Yep.
When I was preparing this, we've given this presentation before, but so many new features have come out, so I just want to highlight some of those. So 3x3, it's new to Teams, and 7x7 is supposed to come out, I think, by the end of the month. So that'll put them up on par with all the other platforms. Oh, it's actually the next slide. So 7x7, you can have 49 little tiny pictures that you can't tell what's going on, but it's coming. Another neat feature that just makes meetings more productive and easier to handle is that raise your hand feature. So you can have the attendee list up and this little gold hand will pop up when someone raises their hand. Have animation in there. How cool is that?
Woo.
Another feature that probably people aren't really familiar with yet, and it takes a little configuration to get it set up, is roll call. It's attendance list. So if you're the organizer of the meeting, this little arrow will show up. You can click on it, and it will download a CSV file. And it even has, when people, if they have joined and left and rejoined, it timestamps it. So depending on the situation, if it's a mandatory meeting, click the button, download, you have a list of attendees for the meeting. Huge in education when you're trying to keep track of kids participating in a classroom setting, but certainly can be applied to any kind of meeting.
Policies, training, yeah, things of that nature. Yep.
And then another option that's newly accessible, it's the ability to control some of the options of that meeting. It used to be something you could set up once the meeting was scheduled. You can go into these options. Now there's a settings option right from the meeting. So, right, typically when we set our meetings up, everyone is a participant. They have full capabilities. They can mute people or present. But now, before that meeting starts, as soon as you join, you can click this option and I only want people in my organization to present. I want people to be able to bypass the lobby. So all these options are right there, super easy to configure. Just, again, showing how Microsoft is continuing to evolve the platform.
And they have something called user voice. User voice is where you vote on features that might be required. So you can imagine the presentation of 3x3 video as opposed to 2x2, and then even the 7x7. That was top features. Those get development cycles, and so Microsoft is listening in theory and developing their product accordingly. So that's partially why people are enjoying Teams more and more each day.
So moving on. Kind of the evolution of a meeting is a meeting in a dedicated room. So back in the office, which we haven't seen for a while, we have a dedicated setup. We have a dedicated device in that room. And it just makes joining a meeting the push of a button. So anybody can do it. There's some configuration behind the scenes where you're actually, that device becomes an object in your environment and you can schedule meetings with it. So it's really nice. because each calendar is part of your calendar, and you can see when the room's available and schedule meetings into that dedicated space. And having multiple monitors set up so you can present on one and see who's attending on another. There's a dedicated app for it. It scales to any kind of room size. There are options to integrate with your existing equipment. So there are some dedicated devices that can be a kind of a go-between. So if you've already made an investment, you can get maybe a device that will act as an intermediate between teams and the existing equipment that you have. Low training effort, because the device says there's a meeting, click the button to join. Doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, the integration actually oftentimes with some of those legacy systems is cloud-based, right? So you might not even need a device to take advantage of that. I would say the experience is good for the people in the room because it's easy. Also, obviously, scheduling the room, which is sometimes a hassle. This room would have its own calendar, right? An exchange calendar that gets taken advantage of. You invite it. If it's available, it says no. You can have a moderator, someone who evaluates the request and puts it on the calendar if desired. So good experience for the people in the room. For the people outside the room that are, seeing, it's going to be dependent on what you purchased to supplement that. Like, was there a camera system? Did it shoot the room effectively? How's the audio within the room so that, if you have multiple microphones, they're typically set up so if someone's walking, you're feeling the idea that they're walking and kind of staying within different areas of the room. So audio visuals come a long way, and it's a good remote and in-person experience.
Some of the more advanced features that are available would be touch displays. So our conference room is set up this way, and people love their whiteboards. So it's a digital whiteboard. You can also fire up a whiteboard on your client. So it's not so easy when you're using your mouse, but if you have a touch screen, it's a great way to enhance that meeting. And then you can take that a step further by using a content intelligent camera. So if you put a camera on a whiteboard, it can digitize that information, and it can do things like, right, well, you need to get the person out of the way. So I come from an education background, and a long time ago, we started using tablets and wireless projectors. So our teachers could walk around the room, writing their notes on their tablet, wirelessly projecting. And, it's a hard environment to comprehend when person's standing in front of, right, what they're writing. So yeah, it's a great view of your back, but that's not what I need to interact with. I need to see what you're writing. You need to get out of the way. So some intelligence, it's a simple thing. You add it to your room, just a simple camera that can look at that whiteboard and take the person out of the equation.
And outside of obviously whiz bang, I mean, you can see any room can go from, just a screen, right, with a HDMI cable hanging out of it, to a screen where you can digitally, through air broadcast, intelligent capture, to all the way up to these really smart devices, right? And so there's this broad gamut of things. What's right is going to be dependent on, budget, desire, who meets in there, what kind of information needs to be transposed, what equipment do you already have, where's your team's maturity level, what's the training plans and things of that nature. So we've got an interesting organization we're working with right now. It's a college that has hundreds of classrooms upon which they will be teaching this fall. And you can imagine that some of these rooms, they have a desire to have a good remote experience for some students maybe that are now staying at home as opposed to being in the classroom. So they want to provide on-par experiences. And so we're working with them now and actually touring either in person or virtually. We're working with a vendor that provides a lot of the appliances here to give them kind of a layout and profile of rooms. Okay, so they'll have A through F room scenarios, and they're going to take a look at budget and see what they can afford relative to this many A rooms and this many B rooms and this many C rooms, and it might not be possible, and so they might need to move it down a grade, if you will, in terms of budgets. But people are definitely evaluating the rooms and determining in this work remote, possibly for longer, how do we support remote workers and have them interact the best way possible with potentially employees that are on-prem.
And I think with Teams, you get just a huge range of options. So, right, adding the client to your cell phone turns it into a Teams device. Right, adding it to your desktop, your laptop, it's now a Teams device. Adding right, an earpiece like I have, or just your earbuds, takes that experience up another level. There are dedicated phones, dedicated conference room equipment. So you can go from low budget, low end, right, earbuds, all the way up to dedicated devices for dedicated room. And, the experience, it's better in dedicated, but you can pull off a meeting with a laptop and the built-in webcam, and the experience is, very good. You don't need to have all the dedicated equipment. And just, right, there are so many different vendors now producing devices that can do this. So, in the lower left here, it's just a way to take your cell phone and wirelessly connect it to a dedicated device. People still like right? I want to push the buttons on my phone. I want a dedicated device. So the whole range of equipment is available to you. Like, here's just a list of, right, some of the different vendors that provide this.
Yep, and sometimes, or this is partially some of the fun, right, is letting people have a device bar. It's a bar that doesn't, it costs some money, but otherwise it's bars that we are actually able to visit, right? A virtual device bar. What kind of device do you need to best support your work environment? And obviously in a pinch, just putting a Teams client on a cell phone is kind of number one. But graduating up from there, there's a number of innovative devices, including, that device on the left-hand side there where you're actually plugging your cell phone onto a platform. It's simply a charger for your phone, but it uses your phone and the Teams client on your phone as the phone. So your phone is actually the computer. The rest is just a dial pad and a charger and a headset, right? So it's really kind of interesting things that come out nowadays, and you're like, oh yeah, why buy another computer disguised as a phone when I already have a pretty powerful computer in my device?
So I think you can break these devices up then into these different categories. So the personal devices, if you need to have a dedicated phone, you certainly don't. A headset will work just fine. I have a speaker puck, and so I'm able to use that with OneNote, and I can transcribe meetings in real time. So it makes note-taking a lot easier, but you need some dedicated equipment for that. Or if you want to have an impromptu, right, meeting, you can throw the speaker puck down, and now it's, right, you've created a conference room environment, all the way up to the dedicated systems with cameras that will track and interactive whiteboards. So the whole range, and then just, right, getting the right pieces in the right places.
Tim, do you have the call quality dashboard as part of this?
I don't.
Okay, that's fine. I wanted to chat with it then. If I didn't, I was going to delay to that slide. But there's also the capability to look at all these metrics, right? Look at all these device choices that people can make or you might have in your environment. Layer on top of that all the networks people are connecting from, whether it be their wireless networks at home, networks at work, let alone they're having talks to other people's networks, right? So if you're having a quote unquote bad experience, or someone's claiming, hey, that call was a little bit choppy, what was it? Was it the device, your network, their network? Was it Microsoft having a problem on the back end? And the call quality dashboard is ultimately a tool that's going to gather all the data. How many people, I bought these expensive headsets for people. How many people are using those headsets nowadays? Oh, Johnny, I see that you keep using your cell phone client, which is fine, but I bought you a $300 headset. Let's reprovision that to somebody who might take advantage of it more. So capability to look at all this data in an aggregated way in one dashboard can not only help from a troubleshooting perspective, but it can help from a planning, and it definitely incorporates some of that device data. And Tim, thanks for your willingness to kind of go
Sure.
pull that stuff up. But this is the kind of data that you can aggregate, and again, not have to worry about it unless you're doing some planning or some troubleshooting.
So it's a little low on data because this is just our demo environment, but right, everything in the blue is good. The gray is unclassified. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just wasn't classified. And in this environment, there's no red. And that's what I was really trying to do, was I was trying to generate a poor quality call, because what you can do then is you can click into that data and you can see what happened. So it tells you the client, the network, right, latency, and it just gets you into what happened with that call. So I actually had a call going where I switched my wireless off. So by default, the Teams client is going to want to use the best connection it has. So wireless is going to be better than cellular in most cases. So I forced it to switch from wireless to cellular, and then I switched it back, and then I switched it off again, and then I put my phone in the freezer. And
Still couldn't get it.
Still couldn't get it. Never dropped the
You got to
call.
talk to that Verizon guy that, can you hear me now? And just see if maybe he can keep walking with your phone till it falls out of cellular range. So.
Right. I know one of my son's friends doing an internship for a cell company, and he got to go into their lab, and they have Faraday cages. So it's a big copper room.
Okay.
So I guess next step would be give him my phone and take it to the lab and go into the copper room and see if you can kill the call. So.
But this dashboard is one of a few that we have available to us, and we manage on behalf of our customers. So the call quality dashboard is a tool that ultimately, outside of some good reports, that kind of show how things are operating at the end of month, it also can be a real-time analysis tool in case we need to do some troubleshooting on your behalf, looking to make sure that you're having a good experience. So just part of the package of capabilities for us. But I thought it was interesting just because there's so many devices that might have your head spinning a little bit, but do know that all the data at the end of the day is aggregated back into some centralized portals.
Yep. So last thing, just want to spend a minute on would be live events. So Teams meetings, I don't know, it's 350 maybe now. They've bumped it up to.
I think it's still 250. Is it 350? I don't think they'd bumped it, or I had not read that.
No, you can chat with 350. So I'm not sure if the meetings will go that high.
Yeah.
Something that they're continuing to increase. But if you want to do a big event, a live event is like 1 to 10,000. So you can use dedicated equipment. What's amazing though, it's the same client. So when you go to schedule a meeting, you can do a meeting or you can do a live meeting. So from a user standpoint, the interface looks a little different, but you don't have to install any different software. You don't have to learn a different product. You just schedule the meeting in a different way. And you have a few different options. There's some more interaction between the clients, right? You have moderated question and answer, kind of what we're doing with the go-to meeting. So a lot of those functions are available in the live meeting.
You have sentiment analysis, so people can give like a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down with regards to how they're feeling about what it is you're saying. So you can kind of measure response, because you can imagine it's not easy to say, hey, let me poll everybody and see how you're doing as a 10,000 user sit. So you just kind of get a flavor for how people are reacting to you, what the sentiment is, as well as the conversations and the chat, rather than being a single thread, could be Yammer based. Therefore, it's multi-thread multiple moderators and responses, things of that nature. So, and obviously the capability to, up the professional quality, if you will, of this to organize a town hall where a large organization can trust this platform beyond regular Teams approach. And we saw this leverage. Actually, we saw a Teams meeting get leveraged up in a couple hundred people that we helped an organization with the other day.
So those are the topics we had to cover. Some of the things that we can do in the Teams journey. We've done envisioning and readiness with many different customers. Just talk about ways to get Teams started in your environment. It could be envisioning and readiness around voice or meetings, or it could be about Teams or just chat. So the whole gamut of what Teams has to offer. Right, some of those are listed there. Getting people connected remotely, setting up voice, it's pretty straightforward to do. Or if you're still on the Skype platform and you need to start planning that migration now, we certainly have experience with that. So
did it ourselves as well as moved several organizations off that, but it's Skype was a great platform, just more complicated, I would have to argue, and certainly has a lot of on-prem components to think through. Common area phones, 911, things of that are all accommodated. Just need to have some plans enacted as you move to Teams.
So coming up next week, we'll have the third part of our 200 series, and that's really focused on governance and security. And anybody looking to go anywhere with Teams, you really need to look at this, because I think the last time I checked, there were almost 90 different settings within the Teams application that you can, right? They should be set for best practice, but every organization is going to have their own needs. And you really need to at least review them and make sure you understand what they are and what you can do with those. So there's a few that we've identified that I think would really help an organization. So we'll spend an hour talking about that. And then the following week, Bruce has this month in cybersecurity, which he's been doing for many years now.
Yep.
So that's what we have coming up.
30 minutes on all the stories that might help a smaller medium business overcome some of the security shortcomings that we'll hear about in the news and kind of digest as a group. All of those events are available at peters.com, and just click on the events tab.